Initiating moisture.
Welcome to MMU, Moist Meter University, where our only major is wetness and how to achieve it. The only student that showed up for class today is Syberia 3. Now many of you are probably unfamiliar with the Syberia franchise. It never saw mainstream success or anything, but it did develop a little cult following, as anything does these days. I actually saw a community online the other day about people that like to dress in rubber suits and shit their pants, and then just play with the shit bulge. It was interesting, but as to illustrate the point, everything has a cult following, and Syberia is no exception. So this new Syberia game is not a full-priced game, it's a lower budget title, it's a $40 game, and I really do think you get a lot of bang for your ball sack here at that price point. Now the first thing everyone's going to notice about this game is how dated it looks. It looks like it's out of the early 2000s. It looks like a PlayStation 2 title. It looks like the Dance Dance Revolution cutscenes you would see in the background when you're boogieing, and for a lot of people that's going to turn them off. Now, for me personally, since I'm familiar with the series, it brought out a feeling of nostalgia for me, and I really did just kind of enjoy the way everything looked and how rough it looked. I know that's not exactly a compliment or anything, but at least in my taste, I liked it. But I can totally understand people who aren't familiar with the series just immediately writing this game off just because of how bad it looks, and make no mistake, it does look pretty fucking bad. But there's a pretty good game underneath the mediocre visuals. The story is compelling and it's very interesting. The characters themselves are pretty interesting as well. I like the environment. The environment looks nice and it keeps it fresh and it keeps you guessing as to what's going on. The puzzles are fun to do. They're not frustrating. They're fair. Finding the objects is also kind of fun, because exploring the areas is nice. And you don't really need to play the other two games to really care about the story or the characters in this game. I think the game does a good job of bringing you into it, which is good, because a lot of people haven't played the other games. The soundtrack is also really nice. That stood out to me. On its own, it's really nothing special, but everything just sounds really good in the game, and really brings out like an eerie sense of suspense, which I like. I think they did a great job with that. They nailed an atmospheric vibe here. Now the gameplay is where one of my big complaints comes in. The gameplay is very clunky. Movement, you're like a fucking tank that's drunk. You move around like you're in a fucking trance. It's hard to control your character. Everything kind of buffers, so if you hit a button, it takes about like a second sometimes for it to register that you pressed the button, which is just infuriating at times. It's like you're perpetually lagging here. And there's also a big frame rate problem on the PS4, which is kind of just like a spit into my asshole, because this game really isn't too graphically intensive or mechanically intensive or anything like that. I don't know what's causing it to drop to 5 FPS sometimes when I'm running around. This game could have been made to be played on a fucking Game Boy with fine FPS. I don't know why the PS4 has a problem with it. I don't know if it extends to the PC or anything like that, but at least on PS4 it did have frame rate issues. Now the game plays like a telltale game like The Walking Dead. You'll have choices, you have some dialogue options, the characters you talk to will remember what you say and they'll make note of it, and it feels very good. It's a good way to use the formula, and it does a great job with it, I feel. Now let's just dive into another huge issue I have with this game, and everyone will have with this game. The voice acting is absolutely fucking abysmal across the board. The voices don't fit the characters at all, and there's no voice syncing, and the voice acting is so uninspired, and they even left in some bad takes. I noticed a few times throughout the game, the characters would repeat themselves because their first take was shit, so they'd do it again, but they kept that first take in there. In fact, at one point in the game, a character burped during what he was saying, and then just continued with that burp in there, and that pause following the burp. This wasn't a planned burp or anything. This man went off book. He fucking shit on the script and said, "I'm doing this my way," and then just burped, and then continued with the lines. It wasn't something that was supposed to be there, but they still kept it there just because they lazily threw it together, it feels like. It just seems like all the voice actors just read right off the script in one afternoon, and they threw this together really quickly. And unsurprisingly, the final product comes out sounding like an 8th grader's home movie.
Oh, my head.
Hello, Kate Walker. Is everything all right, Kate Walker?
Who are you?
My name is Kirk, Kate Walker.
In addition to shitty voice acting, the animations are also pretty diarrhea. They're not great by any stretch of imagination. I mean, they get the job done. They can at least convey the idea of what's going on, but fuck, they are very bad at most points. Another thing I forgot to mention in terms of gameplay is the camera will oftentimes not do what you want it to do or expect it to do. For instance, if you're trying to walk through a door, you'll oftentimes just run into the door or next to it, and then when you try and correct the problem, you'll end up just running in a circle doing like a fucking donut, and you can't really stop it since everything buffers. You'll try and correct it, but just end up being caught in this endless loop like you're being flushed down a toilet, and your character's just going to be spinning, and you can't stop until you just let go of your controller and wait for your character to stop moving. You just get caught in this fucking endless vortex because the controller and the camera don't really work together very well. And this extends to when you're solving puzzles and looking for clues. So if you're trying to angle your camera so you can look at a wire that you can connect somewhere else, or look at a screw that you can unscrew, or read something, or move things around to find something underneath some folders, your camera might not respond right away or do what you want it to do. It all kind of just boils down to luck. If you can manipulate this camera and get it somewhere, it's just kind of more luck than you just actually moving it. At least through my experience playing this game, the camera's very inconsistent. Now let's take everything I've said here and translate it to the moisture content. How moist is the game? How dry is the game? So I'm going to put this at about a 50% on the moist meter. I think this is the very definition of an average game. It has a good story to tell. I enjoy the puzzle solving mechanics. There's a lot to explore and learn about, and there's a lot of cool little mechanics here. Some of the puzzles are very fun to do, some of them not so much, but that's to be expected. Not every puzzle is going to be an enjoyable one. And overall, I just feel like the game had a lot to offer, especially for $40. But the overall clunkiness of the game and how outdated a lot of this shit looks and is and feels just holds it back from being a better game. Just between the controls not always working very well and making it difficult to get your character or the camera where you want it to go, the low budget porn level of voice acting and the non-existent lip syncing, all of this just working together really takes this game down from being a good game to just an average game. And I think a lot of the people that aren't familiar with the series will probably write this one off, but I think for anyone that does like the other Syberia games, you will like this one. I enjoyed it overall, but I'm not going to say it's a good or great game. It's just an average game, and I think that really just kind of sums up the experience. So yeah.
Hello, Kate Walker.